Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon. I'm the co-founder and CEO with Impetus Digital. At Impetus Digital, we've built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. We have worked with life science companies from across the globe over the last 13 years to help them with everything from creating virtual advisory boards, online medical education events, virtual investigator meetings and publication groups. And since the launch of our award-winning Insight Events platform, we've also been helping pharma companies with hackathons, MSL sales training, and big, large corporate events. But more importantly, at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations with some of the leading edge thinkers, the digital provocateurs, and the life sciences leading edge thinkers, we can all work to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. So I'm really thrilled to having one of these digital and thought leaders and life science thought leaders at the table with me today. And this is actually Ilaria Varoli, who is the executive vice president of Myant, where she leads the operations for the company. Myant knits sensors and actuators into everyday textiles, giving them the ability to sense and react to the human body, as well as to help people proactively manage their health. Drawing on over 20 years as an executive in the apparel manufacturing, wholesale, and retail worlds, Ilaria has served as the key leader for the company in strategic planning and has been the driver for many growth initiatives for the company since its inception. So prior to her time with Myant, Ilaria has held various executive roles in retail, real estate, marketing, as well as general management. Welcome, Ilaria. So happy to have you around the table today.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Nice to be here.
Really thrilled about your role, especially the exciting things that you're doing at Myant. And just, we're going to dig into this really cool world of kind of bringing in retail and textile and clothing and all kinds of things digital. So in your current role as an executive VP at Myant, how has your background in apparel manufacturing, wholesale, and retail prepared you to be at the strategic table and doing all of the strategic planning and growth initiatives for the company?
So, it's funny. Thanks for asking that. As you said, I was in retail for many years, and then I was leading or running a small chain of stores that was vertical. And so through that vertical integration, there was manufacturing. And so I learned the manufacturing process back then. And that's obviously really relevant to Myant today. But interestingly, I think the retail part, I ran a small store and then a bigger store, larger store, and then eventually a district. But many years ago now, when I was running a small retail store that was fast paced, in my opinion, it was almost like the hardest job that I had. Because in a way, I think it shaped me for thinking, it's a bit of a microsystem, and because it has the operations, the merchandising, the people management, the customer service, and of course sales and building, a small business, right? So I think that really helped me shape me into who I am today. But of course, the manufacturing and just managing people, I think in general, has clearly helped me to where I am today.
So Myant is a really, fantastic company based in Toronto. And I'd love for you just to give an overview of exactly what the company does and what its vision is.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, maybe I'll start from where it came from, or where the idea of it came from. It came, I think, a little bit at the intersection of a few forces that collided, but the main one being that Tony Shaheen, who is the CEO and really the visionary behind the company, at the time he had an elderly father who actually wasn't that old, but he developed early stage dementia. And even though it's a large family, he has many siblings, they were incredibly frustrated, as these things happen way too often to way too many families, because they couldn't connect with their father. And they had no way of knowing, was he okay? Was he lost? Was he cold? Was he sick? And so as he started detaching from reality, they became more and more frustrated and worried. And so the question, I think, really came to him mostly as to, it's strange that in such a digital world, we're not able to connect to humans, and not unless we're present. And even when we're present in that kind of situation, it's really hard to know their state. So that's where really Myant initiated from, is the desire to develop a connection to the human body, sort of like a DSL cable type thing.
Fantastic. That's great. So maybe you can describe, based on that history, what does Myant do?
Yeah, so the next thing that we did is we started looking at the textile. I said it was a few different forces. So actually we came from an apparel industry. So the first place we looked was textiles, because also textiles seems to be the logical interface, since it's in contact with 100% of the people and nearly 100% of the time, and is in touch with a large portion of the body real estate. So we started looking at textiles and just looking to see what the advancement in material science was. We connected with various universities and research centers, and it was amazing actually what we found, even like 12 years ago. I think this was maybe 11. And then we, of course, there's also advancement in the automated machines, knitting machines, for example, weaving, etc. So we started thinking that maybe the combination of those two could give us an interface that was able to have sensors and actuators, and the sensors and actuators could maybe be that DSL cable to the body. And initially what we did, Natalie, is we started thinking that maybe we could be an R&D company. So we started with collecting the right people, different kinds of engineers, fashion designers, some technical people when it comes to machinery and knitting, for example. But soon enough, we figured out that actually we needed to be a full-on end-to-end company, which is, I think, part of the reason it took us so long to get to where we are today. Don't forget that 12 years ago, nobody, when we talked about textiles being the actual interface, people just thought that was like a kind of a cool idea, and today everybody's talking about it. We didn't go to CES this past year, of course, but every CES before that, we were talking about it. But in the last two, it's something that people talk about even in healthcare, as you probably know. So I think that today, Myant really is the world leader in integration of sensors and actuators into textiles for creating this platform, or this interface for the connection of humans to collect data for yourself or for sharing with others, such as your loved ones or your doctor or your coach or your trainer, and whatnot. And our first focus, of course, is healthcare, because that is where it is most needed, this connection.
So, when we think about sensors and actuators, Ilaria, a lot of times what immediately comes to mind are the things that we're using on a day-to-day basis. Things historically like the Fitbits and the Apple smartwatch. We also hear about these 24-hour glucose monitoring that people are doing, et cetera. They're not necessarily wearables, but other kinds of wearables like that. Tell us a little bit about why it makes sense to use textiles or clothing to sense some of these, our biometrics, as opposed to traditionally like the Fitbits or the watches. What's intrinsically the advantages that you see?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think intuitively people don't think that textiles are able to do that. So just to give you an example, we have a product that's in beta phase that we can talk about later, but from the band it's an underwear. And so from the band of the underwear, we're able to collect an ECG, core body temperature, movement, posture, location. So all those things are possible from textiles. And I think people don't fully know that. I think that also your question about the other wearables, I don't think we consider ourselves quite a wearable, but I think there's, that they provide a lot of information and good information. and there is real legitimacy to them. But our idea is not to replace them, but to augment them. So the idea is if there's a platform that can aggregate the data, then it's possible to wear a watch when you want to, or Fitbit when you want to, or performance tracker, but it does not change the fact that you're wearing clothing anyway. So I think the idea of having something that you're wearing that is also smart and collects information that can then become a baseline for people. I think that's not a separate thing. It doesn't have to be separate from other IoTs, and it doesn't have to be just wearable IoT. It could be any kind of information. It could be a Holter, for example, or other medical devices.
So at Myant, you've actually developed an entire platform. So it's a whole concept around this textile computing, and you're calling it Skin Textile Computing Platform. Maybe you can spend a couple of minutes telling us about some of the hardware, the software, and the API that you're using, and kind of what people can expect when they get involved with this Skin Textile Computing Platform.
Yeah, for sure. So Skin is really Myant's consumer-facing brand. And like I mentioned before, we have a product that's in beta, and that's the underwear. But we have a series of products that are about to be released in the next few months, and they are undergarments for now. So there is an underwear, there's a chest band, there's a bra, and then there is a tank top. And so basically these are sensing products as opposed to actuating product. I think I mentioned actuating and sensing both. So our product that's about to release in the next few months after that are going to be more also actuating. For example, what I mean by actuating is, for example, heat used as therapy or comfort. Or it could be electromuscle stimulation or haptic feedback. So fabric or textiles actually has the ability to be bidirectional, so to speak. And if I can go back to when I was telling you about the beginning of Myant, one of the things that we did when I said we started an end-to-end and built a full-on at-scale production facility, we also had to build the team. And that took a long time. And the team really is comprised of user experience people, fashion people, knitting experts. We have data scientists, we have software people, we have all kinds of engineers. And this team together has also, so we started initially focusing on the hardware, but then we also started developing the software. So right now, the product does come with a companion app. And the product just got approved for Health Canada clearance. So we can now show an ECG. We were already able to capture it, but all we could show was the heart rate. So now we can show that it is a continuous ECG, and the app really gives you all kinds of information, and it's shareable. But we're also working with various doctors. We're in a few clinical trials, for example, with South Lake in Newmarket and a few others. We're also doing some work with Mayo Clinic and Sick Kids. But the purpose of the clinical trials really is also to test the product. So it's on a whole many patients, I think almost 1,000 patients right now. But also to get the feedback from the cardiologists in terms of what they need to see and how to evolve the product so that it can be connected to cardiologists. One of the things, if I may keep going, is that we would like to not replace again, but to be a Holter option. So right now, if you have, for example, an arrhythmia or you have chest pain, you might go to your doctor and then you might have to wait for a cardiologist, and then you They give you an ECG, and if they can't read anything from that, then you might want to, they might want to give you a Holter for anywhere between 24 hours and say 2 weeks, in the hopes that the event maybe repeats itself, and our hope is that our product can give you retroactive data. So you can go to the doctor and they can already see what happened, as opposed to waiting for it to happen again, which is a bit, stressful and dangerous, frankly. So the whole idea is to try and prevent as opposed to react.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what an interesting concept. So that is really great. And I guess you're talking about your phase 2 skin early access program, which is an open beta. So where people are getting, underwear, and they're getting the Life app and all kinds of things. So, and you're already mentioning some of the research initiatives and people where they might be interested in signing up for that. With South Lake and maybe some other teams as well. So what's really interesting here is about the potential use cases. So you've already mentioned cardiovascular. So right away, there's a potential use case there. But there's all kinds of other opportunities with these sensors and actuators, everything from measuring medication to pressure, ECG, temperature, chemical controls, respiration rates, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about how this is going to be applied, for example, in telemedicine? And certainly, I'm sure there's been a bit of an acceleration since COVID-19 with the utilization of these kinds of remote textiles. So tell us how or if this has been used in telemedicine.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think COVID-19 helped highlight the fact that remote healthcare in general is going to be a needed thing for every society, and we kind of already knew that, but I think this just sort of made it clearer. So of course, anything like telehealth or any conversations that we're having with the doctors right now, because a lot of our doctor appointments are remote, if you have the data to show not just what my opinion is about my health and describing to the doctor what it is that's wrong with me, now I have real data that is current. So he can instantly see your ECG, your temperature, your how much you have moved recently, how your posture, and so on. So it gives him an instant, a bunch of information that the doctor can analyze. But more importantly, like I said, it gives you some retroactive data. So if you imagine, you can quickly develop a baseline that can be developed over a period of days, but it could also be over a period of weeks and years. And so if there's a deviation from that baseline, and if your doctor knows your baseline, then all of a sudden you have the ability to potentially prevent things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So I see telehealth being sort of overlapped with that kind of additional or augmented level of information for the patient.
For sure. And so the other thing as well too is asking questions about how this could potentially be used by pediatricians or for pediatrics. What else can be used with these garments, and what kinds of situations can people leverage this with younger children?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good question too, because we are in the process of building, I mentioned that we have a chest band in the skin line, but we're also developing a baby chest band. So the idea is the same, to monitor vital signs for the baby. So we have many plans for babies. As I mentioned before, we're using our product at Sick Kids to see if we can get a better data for their in-hospital patients. In terms of what the baby or kids, because we're starting with baby, but then we'll do toddlers and kids. But in terms of what that information can prevent, I don't want to say, but I think it's, it could potentially prevent and certainly give a higher level of peace of mind for parents that are not in the room with the baby or in the house with the baby, or even later, parents who are at work and their kids are young but at school. So you can have a snapshot view of their well-being So I think that overall, this product could produce or could give peace of mind to all kinds of people. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. And especially people who, a baby is not going to be wearing an Aura ring or, a smartwatch or what have you. So being swaddled in clothing that's going to do the detection without necessarily having to be stuck with a camera over the baby bed if they happen to be somewhere else. It kind of, the sensor goes with them, which is a really interesting concept.
yeah, exactly. And I also want to mention that our first focus in terms of demographic is aging at home. So it's the elderly. We feel like they're an underserved demographic and that they're marginalized and don't really have the benefits of technology that we have. So if you're in your 40s or 50s and you have an elderly parent, then you could somehow be part of their circle of care by being connected with them. And then when they become, or if they have some issues that are more serious, they can also connect with their physician. But meanwhile, there's some safety in knowing that your children or your circle of care is connected with you. And so we assume that this is going to increase the time that they are independent and living at home and aging happily at home.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice plan. So we're talking a little bit about sick care, or, sort of the legacy way that we've always administered healthcare, which is really, everything is healthy, something happens, and then we start monitoring the sickness, as opposed to preventative medicine and preventing and really going into a wellness space. But there is other probably opportunities with your textile computing components when it comes to positive things like athletes and managing and monitoring their progress. We were actually just finished the Olympics, but what's your company doing around that kind of peak performance?
Yeah. You asked me earlier the use cases. The interesting thing about our product is that it's going to be the same product whether you're 20 and interested in not sharing your data with anybody except for yourself, but you're interested in keeping track of your runs or your cycling or your sleep, or whatever information you might need when you're 20. You could be an athlete and you just want to improve your performance. That same product is the same product that, say, for example, I'm generalizing here, but a 30-year-old, who now has little kids, maybe a higher stress level, and he or she just might want to manage their stress level, and again, keep an eye on their sleep or whatever. And then later in your 40s or 50s, and then now you have somebody to worry about, maybe who's older, but maybe also you want to keep an eye on your posture, on your activity level, and so on. But I like the way you asked the question, because I think at some point we realized that it wasn't a healthcare product that we were making. It really was a product that was about life and wellness. And it's not different than the same product that a 20-year-old would wear, and a baby would wear, and a pregnant mother would wear, and an elderly person would wear, or a sick person, or somebody who's at higher risk. It's the same product. And it's because we shouldn't look at healthcare as sick care. We should look at it as healthcare. So if there is a way of keeping an eye on things in such a way that then it can later prevent things that maybe it could happen anyway, but many things are preventable, and we don't react until after an event happens. And so, yeah, I like the way you asked the question, because we don't see it. We don't like sick care. We really want to talk about wellness.
We just went through and are going through the whole COVID pandemic, which for some reason never feels like it's going to ever go away, but that's besides the point. But, huge requirements around things like masking. This is becoming a way of life. We're seeing these textiles, these cloths over everybody's face and under their necks or wherever they're happen to hanging these masks around. What can Myant do around this new psychology of wearing masks and protecting ourselves, infectious diseases, not only because of COVID, but of future infections? What are you sort of doing, and what can we do in these masks to measure and manage health?
Okay, so what we did, by the way, when COVID-19 hit and the whole world shut down, we, like the rest of the world, panicked. But we had the machines, we had the yarns, we had the know-how or the people who knew how to do this, and we quickly put together a mask. And we started, and at that time there was a huge need of PPEs, right? So we started making this mask that I think is a pretty good mask. But what we did is we continued the development of that mask. And today we have a reusable, washable mask. So not disposable. And I think it's gone through 30 plus washes. And it has ASTM level 1, 2, and 3. So it's a very, very, very good mask. And I think that, it started like a side project, but it is textiles. And so the opportunity to use the mask for the benefit of other things is not lost on us, so we're going to keep developing that mask for various usage. For example, testing the quality of the air that you breathe, and things that we don't really think about, but frankly has been an issue for a long time. And so I don't know what the future of masks will bring us, and I don't know how Myant can help, but I can tell you that I think you're right. I think masks are going to be here for a while. So we may as well find comfortable masks that work for us, protect us, but don't have to necessarily limit us.
Yeah, and then potentially put sensors and actuators in there.
Exactly.
I mean, there's probably lots of cool use cases on what we can be measuring through people's respirations, including ketosis and other sorts of things that people are all measuring of, what's going on with people metabolically. So
Exactly.
I think what's really interesting here is you did mention about other sorts of things around cardiovascular. Tell us a little bit about the Zoll Life Vest, the wearable defibrillator. What are people going to see, or how would this be used?
So Zoll is probably the world's most relevant company in wearable defibrillator. What they have is a vest that senses your biometrics, your heart, and then if your heart stops, then it defibrillates you. And so they came to us a few years ago and said, could you make this integrated? Could you make it more wearable? Because their issue is that they do very, very well. And the people who wear this are people at high risk. But it is a very bulky vest. And so they came to us, can you integrate it? And can you make it more wearable? So ideally, we've been working together for a few years to develop the next generation of wearable defibrillator. And that is the kind of business that we do. So we're very focused in our product and what we want to deliver and building the platform. But we don't want to be and cannot be experts at everything. So this is a good example of how we're not the experts at defibrillating. So that's a really great partnership. And similarly, we will do things, and we are in the process of doing things with other industries, such as automotive, or you mentioned sports, brands, sports brands, and things like that.
So in some ways, your business model is not only do you have your own particular product, but you want to provide the technology and know-how and process, or I guess the system, to help co-design. You were mentioning about automotive, et cetera, but there's probably like other kind of testing and validation, production. How is that going to feed in, if you will, to the business model associated with Myant?
So again, I think everybody's looking for integrated innovations, smarter and connected, right? So if you imagine an autonomous car, right now, so that's not such a far future where there will be, autonomous cars all around us. But currently, there's no way for the autonomous car, for example, to connect to the person inside it. So this is how we see the world of IoTs not being separated from the human. So whatever industry it is, whatever form factor it is, it can all be connected in the same platform. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, no,
almost like
absolutely. Yeah.
working in singularity with all the information.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. What I think is also interesting, so it's not only this platform for code development and code designing, so you're creating this process, so you become almost like a service, if you will, and not just a product, is you've also started moving towards sort of an animal science division. Tell us a little bit about what the thinking is there and why are you moving into that space?
Yeah. You know, part of what we wanted to do is take care of the people who have no ability to take care of themselves, right? So increase your circle of care and take care of your circle of care. So it's not a very far stretch to imagine that we love our animals, our pets, and that we would want to take care of them or find a way to be connected with them. And Tony Tony's wife has horses, and so horses have been a part of his life. So we started an animal division. Also, we have experts in the field that are exceptional. So we started a separate office with, and we're starting with equine care. So we have the same band that I was mentioning for people and for babies is also being developed for horses. And we can capture the horse's ECG from that band. So it's pretty exceptional. So we will very quickly expand that to other animals, including farm animals.
Beautiful. What a wonderful broad scope on what you're doing around product, services, sort of textile computing, know-how and expertise, and really kind of pulling that through and really looking, I guess, continual research on new multi sensor embedded textile. So it's going to be a very exciting future for what you're doing. In terms of partnerships, a lot of people work, who listen to us or watch us are from the pharmaceutical industry. You've actually had a lot of really interesting partners, including Stahl, the Mayo Clinic, Carlisle, even Ryerson University. What are some of these partnerships all about, and how do people end up connecting with Myant? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, so Stoll they're all important, but Stoll is a very important partner. They are the machine manufacturers and one of the largest. They're actually Stoll Carlmeyer now. They're one of the largest manufacturers of knitting machines, automated knitting machines. So we have an exclusive partnership with them. So the idea is that they together we keep developing new products, but together we also because they're experts at knitting, but also experts at making these machines. And as textile computing is becoming a bigger thing, we have that exclusive relationship where they're helping us and we're helping them develop this industry together. So that's really important. We have some of the other relationships. I can't give you too much information, but we have a partnership with Mayo Clinic, and we've and in general, our business model, like you mentioned before, was to work with experts in the various fields to help them develop their next generation of whatever it is that they're doing. Whether it's a car seat, whether it's an airplane seat, and so on. For example, office furniture is an example of that. We're looking at developing the office of the future, the connected office. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet, and I don't know how much time we have left, is the connected worker is very important to us. We feel like that people at high risk jobs are not protective in a preventative kind of way. So we think our product could really help that business or that aspect of life.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So pharmaceutical companies specifically, I'm thinking about translation into what we're calling decentralized clinical trials, where a lot of these clinical trials or the patient reported outcomes are happening from non-institution or physician offices. So they're happening at home. Now, there could be a lot of people who can't wear a ring or don't want to wear a certain kind of watch. It goes against their fashion, or they want something else. And so there's probably a really interesting niche of people as well, just in day to day, but also in the use of clinical trials and being able to leverage something that's seamless, that everybody needs, underwear or some other sort of seamless textile that they're going to have against their skin that basically everybody can actually use. So how can pharmaceutical companies consider using this for clinical trials?
I think there's a huge synergy there. Any clinical trial or any pharmaceutical. Okay, so I know you know this as well, but healthcare in general should be less generalized and more personalized. And so this gives the ability for pharmaceuticals to have an immediate or long-term reaction or monitoring to the reaction to whatever pharmaceutical is in the clinical trial, because the biometrics are there. So I think there is synergy between any pharmaceutical and to detect efficacy and potential danger.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what's next for Myant? There's lots of exciting things. You're on the horizon, not only for your exciting product, but also the services that you're looking at doing for co-creation or co-design with a myriad of different industries. What's kind of in store? What are you most excited about?
So of course, we're looking at the next generation product already, with enhanced capabilities and more capabilities. So we have different blood pressure, for example, but many other capabilities in the works. We will continue to develop our platform so that we can aggregate the data and make the data actionable for people's well-being. But also we want the platform to be accessible so that people can also choose to stream their data to loved ones or to doctors or coaches or teachers or whatever. But also we want that data to be able to fuse, like I mentioned earlier, with other data aggregators. Look, in the long run, what we really want is to provide this interface so that people, especially the most marginalized people, have an ability to be connected. And by marginalized, I mean the very young and the very old, the very poor, the very sick, the very remote, for example. There are many different categories that don't benefit from the advancement of technology. And somehow we think that this product could help narrow that gap.
Beautiful. It's a wonderful way to end our conversation. Lots of exciting things. For anybody who's listening or watching this and are interested in connecting with Ilaria, finding out if there's some partnership opportunities for something that you're thinking about or working on, we will be leaving her coordinates and her contact information in the show notes. So please be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you also to check out impetusdigital.com. These are exactly the kinds of conversations, the kinds of really exciting things that we work with physicians, payers, patients, allied healthcare providers, in pushing the needle forward on beyond the pill conversations, looking at policy and legislation and regulations and new algorithms and new strategic inflection points. And we can work with you on these asynchronous and synchronous. So we make it really convenient, easy, and cost-effective to get work done. So we want to thank everybody for your time. We would appreciate if you can like and subscribe to our channel. And we would love if you can leave us a review on iTunes for our podcast. Thank you so much, Ilaria, for a wonderful conversation, and wishing everybody a wonderful day ahead.